right, gentlemen. Up top here. Put him on.
There he is.
And Mr. Richards right here. Keith, you're looking good, Keith.
Both of you on the far side.
We were kids with dreams and no sense of reality, and survived, and we're here. Those are the kind of moments in a life that you just don't get over.
So without any further ado, enjoy the show.
Thank you.
I always get a little nervous when you have to show a film here because in many ways it's like bringing something home to the family.
Yeah, it's shot in Toronto, but you're trying to make it look like New York. I said, yeah, that's great. You know, that's not bad. Because the city's like an actor.
Premiering a movie that took me 20 years to make in front of 2,000 people makes me want to cry.
I mean, there was a time that I can remember when people said, well, film will die. It hasn't and it won't, and it's great.
Now my pleasure to welcome our moderator for today, Tom Powers, director Morgan Neville, and the one and only Keith Richards.
Well, I got to say, I'm very excited for this one today. We got about a half hour. I want to remind you we're here to talk about the film, Keith Richards Under the Influence, and we can talk about Keith's new album, Cross-Eyed Heart, that drops tomorrow. And we're going to try and stick to those topics. If there's an off-topic question, I'll probably move on to the next one. But let me start with Morgan, the director. Morgan, how did this project come to be?
It came to be by accident, really. This was not supposed to be a documentary. I think it started when I got a call from Justin Wilkes, our great producer from Radical Media, and he'd been talking to Jane Rose, Keith's longtime manager. And they said, do you want to sit down with Keith and talk about music? Because he's putting out an album. He wants to talk about, you know, what's happening musically. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to sit down. And I listened to some of the music he was doing, and I heard these incredible influences. I heard soul and blues and jazz, and I decided to bring a pile of vinyl albums over to his house with a turntable. And we ended up just talking about albums for a couple of hours, and it was fantastic. And Jane said, Keith had a good time, she had a good time, we had an amazing time, but she said, you're not making a documentary. And here we are, so.
Keith, Jane had said to me backstage that when she initially brought up the idea to you of bringing in a camera crew, you kind of growled about it. What was your initial reaction to
I growled at everything, man. At the time, as Morgan just said, you know, it wasn't planned, and I didn't really see the point at that particular time, because I'm busy making a record, and I thought, well, this is, you know, this is an extra burden. But once I got talking to Morgan, and we'd sort of agreed on a few things, and he'd shot a few things for a video for one track. I think it was for Trouble. By then, the thing had already taken us over. You know, in a way, the same way this record took me over. I didn't intend to make an album. I just wanted to cut a few good tracks. But, you know, sometimes, you know, you get it, and then suddenly you realize that this thing is bigger than both of you. and you realize that you've got to finish this thing and carry on. Organic, I suppose, is the word. You know, I mean, it's a very cute word, but in a way, it did happen like that. It sort of grew all by itself. The record and Under the Influence sort of grew under the same organic blessing, I suppose.
Well, it resulted in a documentary that is highly entertaining. It's just a real pleasure to be able to soak up a musical history with someone who knows it so well. Your album comes out tomorrow, Cross-Eyed Heart. What should listeners be expecting from this album?
I would like to let me know. I guess when I listen to it, it's a sum of a lot of influences that have had on me. I didn't intend it to be that way, but then I think when you make a record and you're a musician, you are what you hear and what you've been listening to over the years. And when I listen to it now, I realize in a way that that's the kind of record it is. It's a hats off to a lot of great influences on my musical career. Yeah. There's a lot of cops involved, but I guess that even proves the point. It just grew all by itself. There was no intention of doing this. What I loved about making it was because there was no intention of making an album, there was no deadline, which is, as everybody probably knows in this room, there's a deadline.
Theirs is all in about 1 hour.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You got to do with this record. We just made it until we felt happy with it, because it wasn't, expected. It wasn't owed to anybody. And I think that's one of the beauties of the record for me, is the way it was made, and also my great friend Steve Jordan, who is 50% of this record at least. I mean, he's a great friend of mine, and we've worked together from way back now. I mean, we worked with Chuck Berry and Aretha Franklin. I mean, we have credentials, and and so, as I say, it really just organically grew in its own little greenhouse. And I'm not telling you what grows in there.
All right, I'm going to take some questions from the audience. I'm going to start with Peter Howell right up front here, if we can get him a microphone.
Welcome, gentlemen. Keith, glad to have you here. Glad to have you anywhere, as you always say, right?
Yes,
welcome
it's
back to
one
your
of my
favorite
phrases.
city. Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Peter Howell, Toronto Star. I had the pleasure of seeing you in Buffalo when the Stones were on the Zip Code tour.
Yeah.
And I know your relationship with Mick has been up and down, has been good, has been bad, but I have to say, you guys seem to be getting along better than ever. Now, am I imagining that, or are you just pretty good at putting it on? How are you getting on with Mick?
Hey, thank you very much. But I do feel the Rolling Stones are still sort of finding themselves in a way. A lot of excitement in the band. I think they're playing, as I say, I mean, you'd think you'd peak somewhere, but as a band, musically and within the band, I think there's a feeling of, come on, there's more in here yet. There's more to find out about music and about the Rolling Stones and probably about ourselves. And so you're kind of driven to do it, I mean, who wants to jump off a moving bus, man,
Thank you, Peter, for defying me from the start. We would like to talk about the film, so I'm going to focus on questions about the film.
Just a question again about music. I'm sorry about that. Keith, I'm wondering what's the story of Suspicious, because it's one of my favorite songs of the record. I guess, is it personal or not?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Suspicious. Could you explain the sense of Suspicious, the song of the new album?
Is that, it has a different
What's
name,
the story?
maybe? The name change.
Suspicious, the meaning of the song.
The meaning?
Yeah.
That's up for other people to decide. Meanings, I suppose, are there to be suggested. What means something to one person might mean something totally different to another. I sing about situations and emotions, I suppose, and and those two things can mix together in everybody in different ways. There's a little bit of chemistry, I suppose, but.
Morgan, let me ask you this. You've interviewed a lot of musicians. Of course, everyone knows your film, 20 Feet from Stardom. What is distinct about talking to Keith?
So many things. But, I mean, the thing that I realized early on is that that even rock stars have their own rock stars. You know, that they're fans too, and that they don't grow up in a vacuum. And seeing Keith talk about all these different people that influenced him in the beginning was great, because to me, I see somebody who, like me, is just a music fan who just gets their nourishment from music, and I think the depth of his knowledge and the breadth was just something that is not something most people have. You know, that's something that's hard earned and took a lot of years of listening and playing.
Keith, I think there's a lot of people who know the music that influenced you because of you speaking about it, and I'd love to hear. I mean, that must be gratifying to you to know that younger people know Muddy Waters or Lead Belly.
Yeah, it was one of those side effects of what we did as the Stones, and see, in England we were hearing very little blues or rhythm and blues, but probably because we were so starved, we became so obsessed by it, and other people must hear this, and the weird thing is that when we got to America, we realized that most of America wasn't listening to it either, not because they didn't like it, but because they didn't go down that end of the dial on the radio. There was a sort of segregation all the way through society, and I think probably what was the greatest things for me was to meet people like Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Buddy Guy, who also, and John Lee Hooker included. These are guys that we looked up to as the gods, and they would come and thank us for reviving and bringing the blues back to America, and well, that is probably far bigger aim than I ever expected. And this is not something you expect to make a few good records and hope to turn a few people on. But to have your own people turn around and thank you for it, I thought that was, well, that's a big one to bear. I'm still trying to get my hands around that one, but at the same time, I'm damn glad I did it, I mean, and I'm very happy that they thought that we were integral part of bringing the blues back into American mainstream music. That's my job.
All right, I'm going to take a question right here in the second row.
Hi, Jenny Punter from Variety. Morgan, I really liked the structure of the film a lot, how we were in the present day, and then you used individual songs to take us back into a chapter of Keith's creative life. And I appreciated meeting all these other characters. We kind of know about the Stones so much, but to see Tom Waits and others talk about working with Keith, and also the archive. So it's sort of a two-part question about how you came to choose some of these characters like Buddy Guy and Tom Waits that we meet in the film, and also is there archive in the film that people haven't seen before?
Yeah, well, to answer the second part, yeah, there's a lot of archive in there people have never seen. Stuff going back to the home movies from the 60s, a lot of that has never been seen, and Jane opened up her archive, your archive, and we dug in, and there was so much, including the footage of you working with Tom Waits. That was something Jane, your manager, shot on her iPhone, I think, or her camera. So there's kind of an intimacy to that archive. A lot of these are home pictures, and the Polaroids we got from Jamaica your whole time there. I mean, as a fan, that's amazing to kind of be able to get into that stuff and feel the texture of those times. And in terms of how we structured it and who we wanted to talk to, I mean, the whole film is kind of an amble. I kind of think of it as like a scrapbook. And in a way, I want it to feel like a hang, feel like you're sitting around with Keith and you're talking about music, you're talking about life, and at the end of it, you feel like you've gone somewhere, but it doesn't necessarily have a really distinct arc. And then I just felt like we needed some witnesses. Tom Waits was kind of perfect. There aren't many people who I think are really peers. Peers not just in terms of their celebrity, but peers in terms of songwriters and thinkers and being true original characters. And I think more than anything, that's what Waits is so great. And seeing the two of you together was so great as a fan. Too.
To me, Tom is a piece of work, and a real pleasure when he, asked me to work together, because I know that he's a very, basically, secretive man and likes to work within himself. So if I had to work with Tom and to have that lovely poem. I've still got to come back with one on that for him. I'm working on it. Yeah.
Take a question here in the second row in the leather jacket.
Fabian Weinthal for Latin America. I have two questions to talk about the influences that you had. The first one would be the Spanish music that you talk in the documentary. If you could talk about, playing your father's guitar. And the second question would be, since Johnny Depp was right here this week, the influence that you had with his character Jack Sparrow.
Where do you want to start there? 5-string guitar?
Yeah.
5-string guitar. Well, it's 5 strings, 3 notes, 2 hands, and 1 asshole. It's actually it's a very old-fashioned tuning. It actually comes from banjo. I believe, although it's kind of murky history, because banjo players went out of work, but then they would get a cheap guitar and they would tune it to banjo tuning. And it went through a whole lot of shuffles. Some people call it Spanish tuning. Other people open G. I got fascinated with it because it wasn't your classical mode. It was, in a way, you were given another instrument to play with and figure out. And especially when you electrified it, you start to get these drone notes going that you can't get on a regular guitar. And so I decided, well, I found this sort of interesting, especially for a rhythm guitar, this incredible bed for music, and especially for blues and rhythm and blues and rock and roll to lean on. And so I just experimented. At the time, I suppose, I did it because I was not going to get any better on the 6th string. And I thought, well, I've got to take 1 string off and then reinvent things that'll help me, and it did for what I want to do. It's a kind of unique tuning, and I don't recommend it for everybody.
And about Spanish?
The Jack Sparrow influence, the influence that you had with Johnny Depp character in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, Pirates of the Caribbean, yes, that little guitar. I did it for Johnny, and it was great fun to do. The makeup took forever, I mean, I'm sitting next to the guy that's getting the elephant tubes, and he thought I got off light. I only do 4 hours. He's in there for 6. But making Pirates was. I enjoyed very much being Captain Teague,
Less makeup in documentary film.
Huh?
I said less makeup in documentary film.
Oh, yeah, really, none at all. Yeah, and it's a totally different bag.
Okay, we'll take a question right here.
Karen Bliss, I'm the Canadian correspondent for Billboard. I have 2 questions. You profoundly influenced me in my teens. I went back and dug up all those records that you show in the documentary, and I road trip to Chicago. In the film, it's just a wonderful way to present your solo album. And you talk about reggae, you talk about country and blues and classical, all these amazing genres that have influenced you. Would you reconsider your stance on rap? Because isn't that simply the blues for them? Isn't it simply folk
if
music?
you're just talking, yeah. Blues to me also includes music. Not just somebody talking to me, It's as simple as that. For me, I need music. I need notes that change and stuff. It's as simple as that. I mean, it just doesn't grab me, that's all. I mean, I don't want to knock anything. They're having a great time at it, and loads of people, love it and stuff like that. But I prefer not to hear Mary Had a Little Lamb with a bad drum beat behind it,
Right. And you also talk about segregation of, seeing, I think you called it, the last taste of bullshit when you came to America and saw the segregation. You now live in America. It's your home. What do you have any thoughts on what's going on in America right now with Black Lives Matter?
Well, you should ask America about that. I think the whole, basically, I think technology and everything is going through a state of flux. It's nothing new. I think really things are supposed to change. I stick to what I know that I can do best. I'm not particularly interested in catching up with the latest. But then I never was, Most of the music I've ever played was stuff that I'd heard, from guys that were much older than me. And in other words, I was never a big pop freak until suddenly I found myself a pop star. Get out of that, So. I think music is whatever you prefer. It's all out there. You can listen to it, and you can, and it depends what grabs you. I mean, if it's simple stuff, it's simple stuff. I mean, being a musician, I listen for music. And that's what I do.
I'm going to take a question up here in the front. We got the microphone to.
Hi, Rudy Blair. Morgan, what did you do to get his trust, Keith's trust? Because to be able to do a documentary like this, there has to be trust between the both of you. What did you do to convince him to, make this happen? And Keith, why did you trust him to make this happen?
Well, I actually interviewed Keith once before this whole project, back when I did a documentary about Muddy Waters about 13 years ago with Robert Gordon, the biographer. And it's, I did a documentary about Muddy, I did one about Hank Williams, one about Stax Records, one about Johnny Cash. And so in a way, I feel like the work I've been doing my whole life kind of prepared me for this. And because it's not like you can just prep for an interview to go through a pile of records in an afternoon. It actually took years of obsessing over that music too. And so I think that might have had something to do with the connection.
Morgan knew a lot about music. We had met before, and especially the 12 Steps from Stardom. I thought it was an incredible movie. And when suddenly it cropped up again this year, and he said, "Oh, Morgan wants to work," I said, "Oh yeah," because I know the man knows his music, and I know he has a love of it, and he knows that I do too. So in a way, it was a little bit of a dialogue, this movie, without us really knowing that that's what was happening, because I'm doing my thing, but he's catching me. Every corner I go, there's Morgan.
Keith, a big figure in this film is Chuck Berry, who you were a driving force behind making a film about Chuck Berry a couple decades ago called Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, great documentary. What was that experience like for you, being on kind of the other side of a film production, trying to capture something on film?
It's strange, weird, because I always only look upon myself as a musician. I mean, obviously, I enjoy movies and filmmaking a lot. I enjoy loads of things. I read a lot, and what Chuck Berry. I always felt that I owed the man, an incredible debt for his music and for, in fact, of turning me on. And at the same time, I just thought Chuck was the epitome of what archetypal rock and roll should be. Great songs, incredible beat, lyrics that always got a little joke or two in them, nothing's too serious, and also that magical sort of roll, I guess I gotta say, that beautiful bounce and fly on the beat that is very jazz-like. It seemed to me a continuity between, other people sort of thinking rock and roll is new. I knew it as old as the hills, and it was just being presented and recorded in a different way by different guys. But it's just the blues, and it's given new twists by every generation. And sometimes the blues is, incredibly high profile. Sometimes, and other times, you think it's disappeared. But inside nearly every kind of music you're ever going to hear, there is element of the blues in there. And Chuck Berry was one of the guys that sort of epitomized it all for me. And he could do it all himself, write them, sing them, produce them, play them, and get away with it, murder.
I have time for a few more questions. I'm going to go with this gentleman here with the beard. Get a microphone.
Hello, Juan Carlos Garcia from Mexico. This is for Mr. Richards. Tomorrow is going to be released, the documentary on Netflix. I would like to know if you like to see some show of Netflix, and what do you think of this kind of new model of business for entertainment, music, film, and if there is any band or solo singer that you like in these new generations that you consider has a good influence from the Rolling Stones or your music.
That's very difficult for me to answer because unfortunately I couldn't hear what she was saying. I mean, my ears ain't popped from the flight yet.
Well, I can do it again if you want.
Morgan, you want to paraphrase? Yeah, I'll paraphrase, Keith. The second part of the question was, are there singers today, musicians today, who you think have taken away influence from the Rolling Stones that you admire?
I don't know whether they've taken anything, or because, as I said before, you are what you listen to. Ed Sheeran I really liked, the little one-man band. I mean, I liked his attitude towards things. I loved, actually, is it James Bay? Is another young cat that I've been interested in lately. I know that there are loads and loads of great guitar players out there. I always think that maybe this thing has all got to do with, do you meet the right people to play with? That is the essence of a band. And you can have a million virtuosi out there, but unless they can work together and pull and put their energies together, that's the difficult thing. For me, it's a miracle. I got lucky in first go. I got Charlie Watson, Mick Jagger, and you can't go wrong with material like that. But I also realized that it is the chemistry amongst people playing together that makes the music probably far more important than anything one can do by oneself. And so it's got to do with community too. It's got to do with friendship. and it's got to do with living with each other. And it's kind of like a weird family life and no babies.
Morgan, I'm going to flip the other part of his question to you. It was about Netflix, and what's it like for you as a filmmaker to work with Netflix?
It's been great. I mean, I'm not just saying that because they paid for this film, but for the right. Let me just say one thing about documentary, which is what I've been doing for 20 years. There's been a seismic shift in the documentary world, and I think part of it is people know how to find documentaries now. So many people say, I love documentaries, but I never knew where to find them. Now, Netflix has, I think, opened up a whole new audience to these types of films, which has been great. And tomorrow, when our film goes live on Netflix, this is my first time I've ever been down this road, but they tell me it's going to be in, umpteen countries around the world at the same moment. I think that's pretty cool. So I can't wait to see what happens.
Me too.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. I'm going to go to this lady here, if we can get her. Oh, she's got a microphone. Go.
Thank you, and congratulations, great doc, great book. And I'm interested in the combination or the relationship between life and Under the Influence, because it strikes me that the book is obviously much deeper. It's a much bigger project. It's a lot more detail. So the film is a bit the tip of the iceberg. How on earth do you choose what information to put in the documentary when you've got such a vast ocean treasures?
I could say, I give it to the lawyer, and you say, you can't say that, and the blue pencil goes. But in a way, it's like that. I have stories, and I tell them, I was surprised, really incredibly surprised by the book, because, and I really think it was the way the book was put together, and I have to take my hats off here to Mr. James Fox for actually organizing it in the way that he did, because I think he made a coherent story out of it, where otherwise it was just me babbling on and on and on and on. So, but I don't know about the rest of the story, like I say, it's down to the blue pencil, honey. Yeah.
Morgan, for you, you were after something a little different. It was not to redo the Keith's autobiography life.
That would be a 10-hour documentary, and, you could do that. But, our ambition was to just, like I said, give this kind of less of a novel, more of a scrapbook of this time. And in a way, I feel like both the film and the book, to me, work together because they help take this idea of what people thought Keith Richards was, the persona, and actually dimensionalizes it. It makes you realize there's a real person there who actually wrote all those songs and played all those gigs, and he's a pleasure to spend time with. Yeah.
He is a pleasure to spend time with. As audiences are going to find out tonight for the world premiere of Keith Richards Under the Influence, 7 o'clock at the Princess of Wales Theatre. We're so honored to host Morgan and Keith here at the festival. Thank you all for coming. Thanks especially to Morgan and Keith.
Thank you all very much.